Well, greetings and salutations, everybody, and welcome to a new installment. I'm calling it Season 3 of Best Movie, Worst Movie. We are back. And of course, Best Movie, Worst Movie is the show where we very simply do this. We pick a category. It can be a time frame. It can be an actor. It can be a genre, whatever. And then we simply discuss it and break down what we think is the best movie from that category and what is the worst movie from that category. I'm joined right over here by Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, how you doing?
John, I can't believe we've had a 2.5-year hiatus, maybe?
Something like that.
Something like that. It's great to be back here with you and Cody. I used to love doing these shows. They were so much fun to do. And, you know, they're quick, but they're fun and funny. And I'm really excited to be here again.
And of course, we are joined by, we haven't seen him around here in a bit. He is an Olympic gold medalist. He's a big time YouTuber. He is an undefeated Schmodown trivia competitor. Cody Miller is here, everybody. Cody, how you doing, man?
Oh, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. You always make me sound way cooler than I am, but I agree. It's been too long since we've done this, and I'm looking forward to talking some good movies. And, you know, this kind of thing is timeless. You know, we can talk about all kinds of movies. You know, they don't necessarily have to be the ones coming out next week. And I always have so much fun when I'm chatting with you about movies. So being able to do this it's real special.
And of course, you know, I mean, there's a lot of things that delayed us getting back to doing like a lot of things. A couple of those, of course, was, you know, Cody was training. He's had 2 children, you know, little things like that.
A pandemic.
And by the way, and a new home. By the way, I was seeing on your YouTube channel, you got a new home as well. That looks beautiful, man. It looks really good. So we're good to have you here. All right, guys. So what are we here to talk about? Well, you probably saw the thumbnail. Today, to kick off Season 3 of Best Movie, Worst Movie, we've decided that our category are going to be the films of the great one, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He is, of course, numerically speaking, from a financial point of view, he is the biggest movie star in the world. From humble beginnings of professional wrestling. When I say humble, I don't mean WWE. I mean like he wrestling for $40 a night and stuff like that. It was, of course, wrestling was in his blood. He came up, he got into the big time, and he instantly became one of the biggest personalities they ever had in professional wrestling. And then came along, I mean, he had a couple little things like a Star Trek Voyager, I think.
He did a Star Trek Voyager episode.
That's right.
Yes, he did.
I don't think he had any lines of dialogue, but he was in there.
But it's recognizably him.
Oh, it was clearly him.
Like when Mick Fleetwood was on Star Trek The Next Generation, he was completely in an alien. You couldn't tell it was him. But on Voyager, you could see it was The Rock. It was him.
But then came what was truly his break when it comes to making that transition from the ring to the screen, where he appeared in a Mummy movie as very bad CGI as a Scorpion. Our first look at him as the Scorpion King. And of course, then he did his own Scorpion King movie and he kind of took off. But the question is, and Cody, let me go over to you on this first. At what point do you think it was in his career where we started to look, as we look back now, when did Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson stop being the wrestler? And in our minds, he became, oh, this guy is a movie star. I mean, it wasn't the Scorpion King, but when to us did he become the movie star, do you think?
Hey, I actually quite enjoyed The Scorpion King. So if somebody's going to pick that as the worst movie, I'm going to tell you right now, it's just not the worst one. But the aha moment for me was actually the TV series Ballers, because I remember when he started doing that show, I thought this just looks like a gigantic Entourage ripoff. And my mindset of him prior to that series was he's the guy that did a movie like Race to Witch Mountain. He's the guy that did, you know, movies that just weren't really all that great. And I started watching Ballers just like with my buddies, and I thought, wow, the character in that show, he really grew and developed as an actor. And like I believed him as someone who wasn't just this ridiculously gigantic superstar human that like we just see him as. That was the first time when I was like, okay, this guy like can really act. And he made me believe that he was someone that he wasn't, which although he is obviously large in his physique, he was pretty much just a normal guy with normal struggles, you know, dealing with body aches and body pains, the ramifications of playing football, dealing with, you know, financial issues, trying to start this company. Like I bought into that character. So for me, that was the turning point. And then he just turned into what we call franchise Viagra, right? Everything with The Rock just gets bigger and better. So
here's one of the other really cool things about Ballers. It was our first kind of, I mean, he had done other things, but really on a bigger level, it was our first introduction to one of the bigger movie stars in the world right now, which is John David Washington. because he got his start in that as well. What about for you, Rob? Like when you look at the career of Dwayne Johnson, when to you did that switch happen where, oh, this guy's a movie star now?
Well, to me, I always looked at first, like in the Scorpion King and the Mummy movies, Dwayne Johnson first, The Rock, struck me as being sort of like the new Schwarzenegger, where I never considered, in Conan, Arnold was perfectly cast. And then James Cameron using him as the Terminator, he was perfectly cast as well. But Arnold Schwarzenegger never became anything other than Arnold Schwarzenegger. He did not disappear into the roles that he played. And I was wondering, is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson going to be like that guy? And it was The Rundown, which I still think, which is one of his great movies, and that's back in I think 2003. It was directed by Peter Berg, where he's actually playing a character.
Yeah.
And I really felt like he could disappear into a character. I started to see an actor emerge. He wasn't just a personality that was dropped into a story, but he was actually bringing a character to life. And to me, I was really interested in that. And I think as he's moved through his career, he's done both. Sometimes he's just Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, more than I would have suspected, he plays characters in what I think is going to be my favorite movie, which you'll hear about later. He's playing a character. Now, he's perfect for that character, but he's not just Dwayne Johnson. He's an actual actor inhabiting a role. And I think for a guy like him, that's a really big feat to pull off, because Schwarzenegger, as though we liked him in things like Red Heat, he's still just Arnold.
Yeah.
No matter what he's doing. But I think Dwayne Johnson actually has some real acting chops. And I think some of that comes out of wrestling because you're performing, you're playing a character. Whether that's a lot of you or a little of you, you're still playing that character.
But when you look at movies like Faster, Snitch, things like that, he has shown he can just go beyond being just The Rock.
Absolutely. But that was the first time, because I saw The Rundown in the theater. I was like, I saw the Mummy movies in the theater too. I think I saw the Scorpion King in the theater, but seeing him on the big screen, I'm like, that guy's a movie star.
I'll tell you what it was for me. He had already done a couple things before this. Like he had done Doom, and he was already kind of established himself that he was gonna, he was becoming a movie guy. For me, the moment that I went, oh, this guy's a movie star, it was 2008 Get Smart that he did with Steve Carell.
Right. Yep.
Right. That was the first time where, he came on stage, he came on screen, because in the previous things, it's like, oh, there's the wrestler Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But that was the first time. And I'm not saying Dwayne was great in Get Smart, but when he would come on screen, he had that John Wayne ability he sucked up the attention. It was like all eyes were on him when he came on screen. He carried himself as a movie star in that. This is a great example of that, right? Look who he's on screen with. Alan Arkin. He's on screen with Steve Carell. He's on screen with an Academy Award winner right behind him. And all eyes go to him, right? And while it's certainly not his best,
look at him, he's funny.
Yeah.
It shows what he can do.
That was the movie for me when I went, okay, he's a movie star. All right, let me ask you a second question, though. I want to start with you on this. He made two transitions. One was from becoming wrestler to movie star. And I got a feeling we might all say the same thing on this. When did he transition from movie star to the biggest star in the world? And I'll say mine first. To me, the moment when he became the guy, it was Fast Five. Because, Cody, you pointed out, franchise Viagra, right? And that was, because remember, this wasn't a movie that had one movie and then the sequel was really good. Because then you could say, oh, well, that's because the first movie was so good. This was the fifth film in the franchise. And you'd think if there was going to hit a movie where the franchise would take a big jump in the box office, you would think it would be the second one. You wouldn't think the fifth. And you bring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in. He brings a whole new dimension to that franchise. I can't remember what the total box office in Fast Five was, but it was huge.
It was a lot.
It was huge. Way beyond anything.
It was hundreds of millions beyond the fourth film. I think it was well over 100 million more. So you bring in one actor and boom.
And far more than they had ever made on any of the previous films. And to me, that's when it was like, oh, he's the guy now.
Well, John, you know that I love the Fast franchise. And I think
you call it the Citizen Kane of the Fast
Fast
Furious
5
franchise.
is absolutely the Citizen Kane. And I have to say, I think you're exactly right, because the character of Hobbs is a really well-realized character. When you meet him, he's part of this multinational task force. And even the way he uses his voice in that film, I mean, he's playing a character. Now, even though I'm very aware, I'm looking at Dwayne Johnson, he's doing a very good job of convincing me in the audience that this is a character that he's playing, and he's a badass. And I have to say, I don't know how they did this. I don't know if it's makeup or what, or if it's just naturally occurring. No one's head sweats like Dwayne Johnson's does. And I think that added to the appeal. I mean, it looks like he's got this coolant system during the whole movie that's running. And maybe it's just the intensity he's bringing to the role, and he's just pushing the water out of his skull. But first of all, it's a great performance. You love his character. He has some incredible fight scenes, and he's a true badass. And, you know, his physicality with weapons in that movie, like sometimes you put guns in people's hands and they don't entirely know how to hold them correctly, and you can kind of tell. Not Dwayne Johnson. I'm sure he underwent firearms training, because you put a gun in that guy's hand, he looks like the deadliest MF.
It looks as natural as a rattler in a baby's hands.
Unbelievable.
Like it really does.
I mean, maybe he learned that on G.I. Joe too or whatever, but man, and he is just incredibly formidable. And I honestly think part of the reason, as Cody pointed out, hundreds of millions of dollars more were made was because of his presence alone.
Yeah, and because of what he brought to it. All right, so let's get into it then here, shall we?
Uh-oh.
What are the best and what are the worst movies of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson? And let's start off on the negative. Let's start off on the worst one, and then we'll get into our best. I'll kick us off for the worst one, okay? Here we go. To me, the worst Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson movie is a movie I was hella excited for. Super excited about. And if I had to put money on it going into it, I would have bet it was going to be one of the best films I had seen that year. Because you had another actor in there that I'm actually a very, very big fan of, in Zac Efron. It was the comedy Baywatch.
Yeah.
This is a movie that the trailers looked hilarious.
Yes, they did.
The premise itself lends itself to being absolutely hilarious. Dwayne Johnson taking over the lead role with his natural comedic ability. You had a wonderful comedic cast there with him. You capture all the Baywatchisms of it. This should have been one of the funniest movies of the decade. I went to go see this at Paramount. I went to on the Paramount lot. They invited me and a bunch of people to see an early screening of it. And if it wasn't for the fact that a friend of mine who works at Paramount was sitting in the seat aisle across from me, I've only walked out of like 4 films in my life. This would have been the 5th. I would have walked out. Like, that is how bad this movie is. So for me, You're going to have a hard time convincing me of anything being worse than Baywatch. I present to you the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's worst movie is Baywatch. Cody, let's go over to you. We're talking about worst first here. What to you stands out as his worst film?
I don't think Baywatch is all that terrible. It's not anywhere near as good. It's not as good as I thought it was going to be or wanted it to be, because I agree. Zac Efron, beautiful human, ripped, and also hilarious. And so is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It's like a match made in heaven, but I thought it was okay. But here's the thing, I will admit, going down the list, looking at his whole filmography, when I had to pick the one movie that was the worst, it came down to Baywatch and this other film. And the deal breaker to me was I would rather watch Baywatch over the movie that I'm about to see.
Uh-oh.
And that says something. And because to me, rewatchability is a really big deal.
Oh,
and
for
that's
sure.
actually the reason. And that's actually the reason why I chose my favorite or what I believe to be the best movie, which we'll get into in a little bit. It's because it's endlessly rewatchable. But this one I have to say is Doom, for a handful of reasons. Every movie where Dwayne Johnson just plays himself, Dwayne Johnson, it's charming, it's fun, and it's enjoyable. And in this movie, it's just bad for so many other reasons as well. This movie takes bits and pieces of other science fiction movies, like pieces from Alien, pieces from Predator. I mean, the beginning of the movie is basically just a Predator ripoff where they bring this team of guys together And there's recycled lines, like there's cringy dialogue that they just quite literally pulled from other famous science fiction movies, and it like really rubbed me the wrong way, and not in like a fun, playful way, in like a way that's like, I can't believe how lazy this writing is. But the biggest thing that like rubbed me the wrong way was there is the most drastic character shift of any movie character I've ever seen before, because you've got Dwayne Johnson being Dwayne Johnson, and he's like kind of set up as the hero, and then right towards the end of the movie, all of a sudden he just flips a switch and he just starts killing his team members with no narrative storytelling purpose whatsoever. It's bizarre. And Carl Urban, I believe, is in this movie too. And
yes, he is
awesome. Like, he's great. So like on paper, this movie should be good because Dwayne Johnson just playing Dwayne Johnson with awesome weapons from the video game Doom. Okay, cool. You've got me. It's just got to be fun. And Carl Urban's in there, but it's just not fun. It's just not enjoyable. There's enjoyable aspects to Baywatch for me. It's not the worst movie in the world. There's enjoyable parts to The Scorpion King, but I just can't get behind how bad Doom really, really was.
And don't forget, too, that iconically awful first-person shooter scene where they said, oh, you know what the fans would love? Make it look like it is in the video game. And they went through this prolonged first-person shooter scene. That was awful. It's
so bad. And there's the only time I've ever seen that done well is actually in the new Halo series, where they take little snippets of
that wasn't bad.
From the inside. Yeah, from their perspective, like that was cool. But this movie, they were just like, let's just do the whole scene like this. We're gonna do and it's jarring, and it honestly kind of gave me a little bit of a headache. Like, it was bad. It was really bad.
All right. Well, for me, it is by far Baywatch. For Cody, by far, it is Doom. Rob, what about you? What is the worst Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson movie?
Okay. I would think as a good Canadian kid, you would like a movie where Dwayne Johnson is a hockey player.
I see where we're going.
He starts out, and of course, his nickname his on the ice name is the Tooth Fairy, which is the name of this movie, and he's called the Tooth Fairy because he knocks dudes' teeth out. That's pretty much all you need to know about this film. Of course, I understand the idea that it makes sense that Dwayne Johnson was going to make a kids movie, which is essentially, it's a fantasy film teaching children lessons. He learns lessons. I get it. He probably thought, I've got kids. I'm going to make a kids movie. This is the last movie I wanted to see Dwayne Johnson in. By
the way, how weird is it to see hair on his head?
Yeah,
it's kind of off-putting now to see him with hair on his head.
Everything about the word cloying comes to mind. I've always loved the word cloying. I don't get to use it very much. This movie was cloying. I hated it. And I don't even know why. I did not see it in the theater. I saw this on TV like one Sunday afternoon, and I have to say, I started watching this going, what the hell is this? And it was written, the reason I watched it in the first place was it was written by Lowell Gantz and Babalu Mandel, who wrote all of Ron Howard's early comedies like Splash and Night Shift and City. Well, he did direct City Slickers, but those comedies, these classic 80s comedies that were awesome. And like with Splash, they could combine fantasy. You could have a mermaid, but then there's funny stuff in the real world. And I'm like, I'll watch this.
Yeah, not
what
so
a
much.
Mistake, dude. I mean, I'm just like, it was one of those movies where halfway and I'm like, what? You're literally questioning your own life choices. Like, why am I watching this? And here's the thing. Consummate professional that Dwayne Johnson is, he is not phoning it in. He is actually delivering a performance. I mean, Julie Andrews is in this movie. Mary Poppins herself. And you're watching this going, oh, I thought it was a total misfire, but I understand why it got made.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You're thinking like, I just hated all the choices that were made. And I'm like, kids aren't stupid. You could have made a cool Tooth Fairy movie or maybe you couldn't have. But I mean, Seth MacFarlane is in this movie. And it is just, John, it was one of those movies that really made me want to bang my head against the wall until I passed out. It really was.
I'll tell you what's worse than the Tooth Fairy. The guy who edited my movie, The Anniversary, also edited the sequel to The Tooth Fairy, The Tooth Fairy 2, where Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was replaced with Larry the Cable Guy. And that movie, I can tell you, is even worse. So
Wow. I mean, that pretty much says it all.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, we're going to make, I guess the Tooth Fairy, it made enough that they decided to make a sequel.
I mean, it was a direct-to-home video sequel. All right, so we got our spread here. We got Cody going with Doom. I'm going with Baywatch. Rob, you're going with Tooth Fairy. Some awful films. Now, let's swing it to the other end of the spectrum here. Let's start talking about the best movie that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has done. And Rob, we ended with you, so let's start with you on this one. What is Dwayne Johnson's best movie?
Okay. You know what? I've been taking crap for this movie since I said I liked it as much as I was surprised as anyone that I liked this movie as much as I liked it. It was written by Marcus and McFeely, who later went on to write Captain America, Winter Soldier, and Endgame and Infinity War. And it was directed by Michael Bay. And my favorite Dwayne Johnson movie is Pain and Gain.
I like Pain and Gain. I like that movie.
Co-stars Anthony Mackie and Mark Wahlberg. What I think is great about this movie is it's actually based on this insane true story about these roided out idiots, in Florida that decide to, embark on a life of crime. And things go badly for them. Now, this is maybe I really love this movie as much as I do because it was Michael Bay being less restrained. He's actually trying to do, I thought, a character study. And again, I thought Dwayne Johnson was, he looks the part, but he's also trying to play this part. And he brings this sort of his comedic, absurdist comedy to it, but at the same time, I mean, these are all simpletons. This is no Hans Gruber group of crimes. It's you're not going to be like, I am an exceptional thief, madam. There's none of that. Like these guys are, but in their idiocy is so entertaining to watch. Coupled with the Florida setting, the Michael Bay, the beautiful camera work, the over the top. I find this movie to be a delicious confection of fun and mayhem, but also these are people. It's kind of like Mark Wahlberg is kind of doing a riff on the same character he was doing in Boogie Nights, where he's kind of a simpleton.
Yeah, there's some similarity there. You're right.
He's kind of, which I kind of like. But he's an enduring idiot. He's endearing, not enduring. I guess he's enduring because I'm still talking about him. But he's an endearing idiot, and I found this movie to be hilarious, and I can't stop watching it. And I think Dwayne Johnson makes this movie. I mean, he could have worked with someone else, but it's his presence in this movie that is the glue that holds it all together, I think.
I for one, like your pick. I like Pain and Gain. I've been a defender of that whenever I talk, the conversation comes about Michael Bay movies we actually like.
Yeah.
That's always one of them for me, so I like that. All right, Cody, let's go over to you. And we know your least favorite was Doom. What to you is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's best movie?
Okay, yeah. So before I tell you my favorite movie, I'm going to tell you my favorite performance because it just has to be mentioned. Do you remember when he played the egotistical douchebag cop with Nick Fury himself and the other guys? And he and Nick Fury, he and Sam Jackson they're so full of themselves that they think that they're invincible and they jump off the building. Like they look at each other like aim for the bushes. Like I love that so much because it's such a dopey character, but it's so lovable. And I think that is something that really only someone like Dwayne Johnson can pull off himself. And my favorite movie is something that I thought a lot about. And it came down to rewatchability for me because there's a lot of Dwayne Johnson movies that I actually really, really love. Even a movie like Red Notice, which I didn't think was great. I loved him in it. But the movie that I picked is beautiful and I can rewatch it over and over again now that I'm a father. And that movie is Moana. I love that movie. I saw it when it came out and I liked it. And now that I'm a dad and I have a young kid, it's the movie he rewatches like all the time. Axel's always watching it. And I didn't realize how beautiful the animation is. It is a gorgeous movie. The color palette, the ocean scenery, everything about it is gorgeous. And Dwayne Johnson plays this larger than life character, Maui, who I really believe was basically just an animated version of him, huge and Jack, just like maybe a little bit shorter. And the musical numbers in the movie are amazing. Lin-Manuel Miranda, the guy who did Hamilton, who has now done a number of other amazing projects, wrote this and did a lot of it. And it's just, I mean, I can't remember the name of the girl who plays Moana that sings a few of the very
I feel bad because she came into my studio one
Yeah.
time to sit down to talk about the movie. And I forget her name now. Yeah.
But that song, that main song that she sang at the Oscars is, I mean, it's amazing. Like I hear it all the time. Like it's a movie that I never get sick of any of the musical numbers, especially the ones that The Rock sings. Like, what can I say except you're welcome? Like it's just catchy
iconic.
and it's just fun and it like makes me happy. And at the end of the day, it's a movie about a girl who knows that the right thing to do to save her family and to save her tribe is to go against the grain and, you know, basically do the opposite of what her father, who is also the chief of the tribe, wants. And it's going to be dangerous and hard. And everyone is telling her not to do it, but she knows she has to do it. And Maui plays this character. There's great character development within Maui with Dwayne Johnson's character as well, you know, being stuck at sea and lost, and he's given up on himself. And he basically has to refine himself and refine his own purpose, which is something that, you know, although it's a god, he plays a god in the movie, it's something that we all can relate to. And it's really beautiful. And, you know, like I said, there's a lot of Dwayne Johnson movies that I love, but I have rewatched this so many times. And I gotta say, it's one of the few movies that I just never get tired of. I always have a smile. I always enjoy it. It's beautiful. The music is wonderful. And it really is Dwayne Johnson's movie. I know the movie isn't called Maui. The movie's called Moana, but that movie just stands on his shoulders. It really, really does. So that's my pick for the best Dwayne Johnson film.
It's a good choice.
I love that movie.
Well, I love your pick of Moana, and I'll tell you how much I love it. I love it so much that it is also my pick. Moana is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's best movie, and I'll tell you why. On top of what Cody so accurately pointed out, this movie is infinitely rewatchable. Like I can watch it all the time. It is both exciting, and it is sweet, and it is charming, and it is funny, and it's inspirational, and your heart smiles, and so much of that, a lot of it, has to do with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It breaks out into song. You're welcome. Did they perform that at the Oscars? I can't remember if they did or not. But
I don't remember.
You're Welcome is an amazing song. Even if you just listen to the lyrics and read off the lyrics, of course, Lin-Manuel Miranda, a lot to there. It's like, that was just Maui messing around. And like all the lyrics and the fact that his tattoo starts dancing around with it and all that kind of stuff. It is a beautiful, gorgeous movie. And I understand it sounds like a little bit of a cop-out to go to an animated film.
Yeah, because animated movies aren't real.
Yeah, that's right. They don't really count. They're just
animated.
for kids, right? But like, I understand that he didn't have to physically perform it. And okay, I get that. But still, as a movie, I thought about Fast 6 or Fast 5 and maybe a couple of other ones. But I'll just tell you what, there's no other film on Dwayne Johnson's repertoire. And there's a lot of them and I enjoy immensely. But there's none that brings as much joy to me as Moana does. It's just, and a lot of it again is the way, and you're right. Can you bring up that one picture of Moana and Maui again? Because here's the thing, for a long time, we looked at this, and if you know, my wife, Anne, and her brother Ray, that's Anne and Ray, kind of. If you really look at that picture, that's kind of a representation of my wife, Anne, and her brother Ray. That's Anne and Ray right there. But I mean, it's the way, the voice performance that he brings to it, the heart of it, the snarkiness of it, the all that kind of stuff. It's just great. And he fills the screen, even though he's not on it technically, he fills the screen with the definitive rock presence, as he's doing it. And I'm not a father, so it's not even anything to do with me having kids. It's just a great movie. And I think he should be proud to say that the crown jewel in his career right now is probably Moana.
Well, you guys I think you're absolutely right. And I think it also speaks to the fact that his presence is not just in the wrestling ring. It's not just playing a larger than life character. The fact that he can bring an indelible voice performance, and he even sings. He sings, does he not?
Wait, we're just talking about, You're Welcome.
I mean, he sings that actual song. So the fact that he's able to convey, it shows, because some great actors are not great voice performers. They need the reality of other people, and he doesn't. He is a truly a consummate performer on many different stages, and that proves his versatility, his ability to be all things to all people, depending on what milieu that he's working in. And I think it truly speaks to what kind of a star. This is why he's the biggest star in the world.
Yeah, that he can do all that.
I don't think that there's an actor in any other animated movie that I've ever seen that embodies themselves and the character so well at the same time. Like, he is Dwayne Johnson, but he's also Maui. It's like a seamless, perfect it's beautiful. And the writing in this movie is very, very smart, right? You know, as a dad, I watch a lot of animated movies with my kids, and there are little jokes in this film that poke fun at other animated tropes. You know, there's a line in the movie where they make fun of the fact that, Moana is actually a Disney princess because she has an animal sidekick, and there's little things like that is more for the older generation as well. It's very, very well written, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
So guys, there you have it. The best movies of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and the worst movies of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Of course, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, biggest movie star in the world, puts out a lot of great stuff, but he's had some not so good ones along the way too. So the question is for you guys, what to you represents the worst movie that Dwayne Johnson has done and the best movie that he has done? You guys can jump down to the comment section and let us know there. But that will do it, guys, for this installment of Best Movie, Worst Movie. We will, of course, be back again next week with another topic for us to go into and debate the best and worst of that category. I want to thank, of course, Robert Meyer Burnett for being here. Thanks so much, Robert. Of course, we've got Cody Miller is back. Cody, congratulations again on since the last time we saw you, the 2 kids, the new home, all that kind of stuff. That is awesome. We look forward to having you back again. And my name is John Campea, guys. That'll do it for us for now for Best Movie, Worst Movie, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.